So to wrap this up, I did want to ask, like, I mentioned dream game to make, just like, what is like the dream game to play? Like, I have one, where like I love stealth games, but I also like just above stealth games, and like my favorite like game mechanics or like genres is like I like hack and slashes, like God of War. I like Devil May Cry. Um, and for me, the ideal game would be a game that somehow perfectly blends both. A lot of games try, but it's hard to do because they're opposites in a lot of ways. It's hard to make those two things work together. I think a game that seems like it's coming close to doing that is Assassin's Creed Shadows, which comes out in February. It was supposed to come out a couple of months back, but it got delayed. Which the more I see of it, I'm like, it's looking better. So it got delayed for a reason. I'm getting real excited for it. Even though I wish I could have been playing it right now, I'm excited to see what it looks like when it's finished. And for me, like, I mean, really, I feel like the ideal games come out soon with that game. But for me, it's like, yeah, an open world stealth game that kind of like perfectly balances stealth and character action gameplay. Um, and instead of expanding the map outwards, which I think maps and games are big enough. We don't need to get bigger. Instead, have a relatively small map, but have more vertical space. I feel like the Dishonored games do that, where it's like they're not open world games, but there are areas that are slightly more open than others, and there's a lot of verticality in those maps for you to get above enemies and hide and sneak past, and having working more in more vertical space and internal space, and being able to go inside of more buildings and climb on top of more buildings, and incorporating the parkour of Assassin's Creed with like the stealth of like Metal Gear Solid 5 and the combat of something like Ghost of Tsushima would be like my ideal game. If you could like Frankenstein the ideal game together like that, like what would be your perfect game? And you can go
Well,
as well, I hear.
except for the combat, what the game you just described is very much Indiana Jones, which is pretty funny, right? A small map, but lots of verticality and secrets, and you can't have to go back once you find something to unlock an area in the same area you just were, and you find there's a whole catacomb underneath it, right? But um, I honestly don't know if I have that in my head because I played so many games over the years, and um, I'm constantly surprised when I play new games about things that I've never thought about or never thought about doing. So I think the perfect I'm very much a story and world type virtual, not well, and EXO it turns into virtual world, but I'm very much a give me a space that makes sense, that has store lore and rules that make sense, and then tell a great story inside that world, and make me want to explore that giant map. Don't just give me a giant map. Like make me want to actually go out and look. And to me, that's Fallout, Horizon Zero Dawn, Elder Scrolls games. Like the going around the map is not the chore; that's the game, and that's the kind of game that I gravitate towards.
Red Dead is that for me in terms of
Yeah,
just make me want to
yeah.
go out and explore the map.
I haven't played that nearly as much as I should, but yes, I would put that in that genre.
Yeah, how about you, Arya?
I think for me, my ideal game to play is a little, it's not complicated, but it's like and I'm having the same issue as you, Deshaun, where it's like a genre mashup that would be really hard to do, but I think it would be really fun. Like I want to see a survival horror game with like RPG-esque elements where it's like your character gradually gets better over the course of the game. Not just because like your skill level increases as a player, but there's actual like elements because it's like being put in a horror, like a survival horror situation. Yes, you'd probably start off kind of like trash, the limited inventory, the low stamina and all that. But over the course of like the experience or whatever, like Silent Hill or whatever you're thrown into, I feel like there would be room for like, a person to improve under those like stressful situations. And I think that would be really, really fun.
I think that the closest games to that are like the Evil Within does a lot of that, where it's like there are ways that you upgrade across the course of the game, and there's
Yeah.
like a whole upgrade menu. But also, Parasite Eve has a
Mhm.
lot of RPG gameplay mechanics. It has this kind of like almost like the current Final Fantasy VII remake games, the way they do the ATB system where you can slow down time and choose between attacks. Parasite Eve, which was, I think it was a PS1 game.
Yep,
This is a
I love
survival horror
Parasite
game
Eve.
that does something similar to that. But like I see what you're saying, and that
Hmm.
could be interesting. A survival horror RPG. Are you
Yeah.
imagining the combat is the way that it usually is, or is it
Hmm.
different?
Specifically, the game I had in mind was Signalis, which I've been
Mhm.
playing the hell out of recently. But it's like if you took like Signalis's combat system, which is very like stop and shoot, which I really really enjoy for a survival horror game. It's like if you took that and then like added kind of like what Parasite Eve does, and just like I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of potential there
Yeah,
that's untapped.
like a fixed camera tank controlled
Hmm.
survival
Hmm.
horror with RPG elements.
PG elements,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty fun.
um Not a survival horror, but I did play a horror game with like RPG elements. It was called it was a long time ago, called like Liar Genie in Crucifix Kingdom. It was like an indie game made an RPG Maker, and there like the system there was like you could equip any item and it would like affect your stats, but of course some things would affect your stats more or less than other things. And I thought that was a really sophisticated system. It was super complicated in Liar Genie, but it had potential, and I had never seen anything like it before. So seeing something like that also, I think, would be really cool.